Today we're going to do a dictation, and the first word is casier. Casier. The word is casier. Casier.
Did you know that even in countries where formal education is easily accessible, 30 to 40% of the pupils leave primary school with levels of literacy that are too low for them to pursue their secondary education comfortably? About 10% of them will encounter important and persistent difficulties with the written language, that is, dyslexia, and this regardless of their social background, ethnic origin, or language. These pupils risk falling into a vicious cycle of failure at school and repeated frustration.
We looked at 8 prisons in the north of England, and we looked at the incidence of dyslexia. How many people in prison have a specific learning difficulty? What we found out was that 52% of the prison population have difficulties with reading, i.e. they can't pick up a newspaper and read even the most basic columns. We also discovered that 20% of the total prison population have undiagnosed learning difficulties such as dyslexia. Now that is double what we'd expect in the general population.
My former school was a bad experience because although they knew that I had dyslexia, they didn't really know what it meant. So they didn't really know what to do to help me. And they didn't understand that reading and writing were very difficult for me. They said, well, Robin, you know that you could do better. And my marks were always very low for dictation and anything to do with language. And so I saw a speech therapist to help me read better. And that helped a little, but things were still very difficult.
And I'm quite encouraged that teacher training, and that is a key issue in every country, that we need to improve teachers' awareness and understanding about dyslexia.
What I have seen here is that the teachers understand the problem much better. They know that this pupil has dyslexia, so he needs more time than the others to read. Or we won't let him do that because it is impossible for him.
Write the word January.
In every class of 25 or 30 pupils, 9 or 10 will encounter difficulties with the written language, and 2 or 3 will be dyslexic. The traditional teaching methods are not suited to giving them the help they need. In this film, we introduce principles, techniques, and examples of simple and low-cost tools which not only help pupils experiencing difficulties with the written language, but which benefit all the children in the classroom. First, it's important to understand what dyslexia is, and especially what it is not.
One of the major myths is that people with dyslexia are not intelligent. What we know from international research is that dyslexia occurs across all levels of intelligence, all socioeconomic groups, and in all countries.
A panel of experts of international renown has written a plain language definition. Dyslexia is a neurobiological condition which is often hereditary and which results in problems with reading, spelling, and writing. It's usually associated with difficulties in concentration, short-term memory, and organization in time and space. This definition would be incomplete if we didn't mention that people with dyslexia often display exceptional talents.
A number of companies actually just starting to recruit people because of dyslexia. In architecture, because of that visual thinking, which is perfect if you're able to see a building in 3D. In the area of computers, design, development, increasingly people are realizing the benefits of having dyslexics in those places. But it's not just in the creative fields and the arts where we see the celebrity dyslexic, but it's also into the industry, the people in the back rooms who are having to develop policies, organize activities, events within a company to take them forward. The dyslexics are showing there as well.
This results from the fact that the brain of people with dyslexia is differently organized. It's these differences that make reading and writing so difficult for them, because many have the impression that letters are mixed up. Let's compare what happens before and after when a pupil with dyslexia is taught reading and spelling with appropriate methods. After correct teaching, the brain is activated in the region which allows the student to read more quickly and accurately, reading nearly as well as people without dyslexia, and the student hardly uses the areas of the brain that were so active before.
We're going to read a text. I'll read it sentence by sentence, and you think about what the sentence means. And when you know, you raise your hand. We are in Paris.
It's good to know what dyslexia is, but one also needs to be able to identify it in a classroom. Researchers like Bev Hornsby, a pioneer in this area, have identified risk factors that are present even before the child learns to read and spell. These factors are having parents or grandparents who are dyslexic or have difficulties with reading and spelling, being ambidextrous, not being sensitive to rhymes in nursery rhymes, experiencing difficulties in naming familiar objects, experiencing difficulties in learning arbitrary lists, experiencing difficulties in applying a list of oral instructions delivered rapidly. The child seems to be completely lost, although you've just told him what he should do. Not being able to say the names or the sounds of the letters of the alphabet already taught in the classroom. According to Marianne Claes, the typical errors produced by children or adults with dyslexia are auditory confusions between similar sounds. For example, the first sound of big and pig, or of feel and veal. Visual confusions, B and D, P and Q, N and U, F and T. Additions of letters or syllables. Omissions of letters or syllables. Inversions within or between letters. Substitution of letters. For reading, deciphering of words based on their first letter. For spelling, contractions or decontractions of words. Nearly all children make such mistakes when they start to learn to read, but these are haphazard and temporary. However, children with dyslexia accumulate several types of errors that they commit frequently and which mainly persist in time.
We know from the research that the earlier that you provide the help and support for someone with dyslexia, the better their outcomes will be, both in education and in employment.
If you think a child in your classroom might have dyslexia, you first need to inform the parents in order to enlist support. As far as you're concerned, you need to put in place a structure with 4 elements, as recommended by Marion Walker. First, you need to restore and preserve their self-esteem. Secondly, you need to use teaching methods for reading and spelling which are adapted to their needs, structured, multisensory and phonic. Thirdly, you need to give them tools that will help them to face their dyslexia. Finally, you need to use words and texts that are adapted to their age and interests. If you put in place only 1 or 2 of these elements, the structure will be fragile and risk breaking quickly. All 4 elements must be in place to make the support effective.
Obviously, they made fun of my dyslexia, and so it was not very pleasant. They found it very funny. Sometimes they avoided me, but I really didn't see a reason to avoid me. Not everybody understands, and some think that they understand, but they believe that dyslexia is just an illness, but in fact it is not. It is just a problem, and not an illness that passes and can be transmitted.
What they say is that what's been the most difficult for them at school is that negative look they get, a look that kills, a look that means that they're worthless. When they're being asked a question and when they can't answer, they see in the look of the others, you're dumb. And that's very difficult to overcome.
Self-esteem can't be restored in one day. Every child is unique. There's no magic wand, but in every case, it's essential to acknowledge the suffering of these children and to listen to them. As we'll illustrate later on, some tools and techniques that are used with children with dyslexia can help them to regain self-confidence.
Ik mag pas in oktober alleen naar school fietsen, omdat de weg van huis naar school.
You need to use teaching methods which are adapted to their needs. Structured, multisensory, and phonic for the teaching of reading and spelling.
Structure is really crucial for learning. Each subject has a colour. His or her workbooks have the same colour, for example. Dutch is always orange. French is always green. Mathematics is always yellow. When the children are doing sheets in the classroom to remember things, they will pick the same colours as their workbooks.
To associate colours with subjects is only one example. To teach in a structured way implies many other things, like planning well, establishing learning objectives, verifying that each part of the subject is well understood, and especially revisiting the same topic several times in different ways. Learning to read and spell is learning to connect the areas of the brain responsible for what we see and for what we hear. This is precisely what's difficult for pupils with dyslexia, because their brain is organized differently. Multisensory teaching consists in using a maximum of channels into the brain, and whenever possible, using them simultaneously.
We say the letters as we write them. C, A, L, C, U, L.
It's also essential to allow the children to touch and to feel the elements you're teaching, and also to feel the muscular movements associated with those elements.
What do you think it is? Take your time. H, very good. We're going to trace the letter F in the air.
Thanks to this entry channel, which is not only touch but also muscular movements, you facilitate not only comprehension but also memory.
1, 2, 3, F is F. And now we do it one more time with our eyes closed. One more time. 1, 2, 3, F is F.
You need to teach the pupils what happens in their throat and mouth when they pronounce the words and sounds.
What difference do you see with my mouth? We don't see the teeth, or we see them a little bit. Look, we only see the top teeth. We see all the teeth. So when we say f, we close the mouth, and when we say s, we open the mouth. The vocal cords don't move. The tongue is towards the front of the mouth. The tongue is towards the front of the mouth. And the lips are closed.
With this channel into the brain, the pupils will not only hear themselves, but they'll also learn the specific position of their lips, teeth and tongue. This supports learning and memory. Multisensory teaching is necessary to teach the pupils with dyslexia to read and write, but it can also be beneficial for all the children and in all subjects.
And the sound sh, as in shoe, okay? Now we pronounce the three sounds one after the other.
Moreover, it costs nothing or next to nothing and makes learning more fun. There's no reason why it shouldn't be used by every teacher and in every classroom. Scientific research shows that phonic methods are undoubtedly the best methods for teaching literacy. These combine, on the one hand, the explicit analysis and manipulation of spoken words into sounds, and on the other hand, the explicit teaching of the correspondence between sounds and letters.
I'd like to take a pencil and to cut these words into syllables. The first syllable is E. We cut after the E, L-E. We cut after the E, fant, elephant. We're going to count the syllables. A, le, ge, tor.
This conclusion is found in many expert reports from all around the world, including in the English report from the American National Reading Panel, which is freely accessible on the internet. Here are some examples of principles and tools to teach reading and writing in a multisensory way.
I'd like to introduce you to my friend. He comes from very, very far away. I even think he comes from another planet. He said many words that I didn't understand. He doesn't speak the same language as we do. As far as I understood, our friend's name is Flynn. Let's repeat his name all together. Flynn. And I also heard another word. Gzoom. Gzoom. I guess it's the planet he comes from. Our friend Flynn comes from the planet Gzoom. Let's repeat this name all together. Gzoom. We're going to try to make him feel at ease by telling him words which end like his name. But before that, we're going to take our green counters to analyze the little sounds in the word Flynn. Berenice, what's the first sound that you hear in Flynn? So you take your counter and you put it in front of you. Everybody in turn.
Tin.
Tin at the end of Alain. There's also in. Benedict, have you found a word that ends like Flynn?
Bin.
Bin. The word bin ends like Flynn. The first sound he's given me is S. So we take a blue counter and we put it at the beginning. Now I hear him saying ah. So we can say ah. We take another counter and we put it beside it. And now he's saying b. We take another counter. What are the sounds that he's given me? S. Then t. Then ah. Then b. What does this make? Stab. Now he's telling me r. And now he's saying n. So, what did he say?
To be able to read and write, children must first learn to analyze words and break them down into sounds. Spoken words are not successive isolated sounds, but amalgams of sounds mixed up with one another, because it forms a continuous wave.
Now he speaks much better, but he's still making mistakes in words. He told me the word biel. That doesn't mean anything, so we're going to take the blue counters for the little sounds. In biel, there are 3 little sounds. We're going to say them together. It's b, e, l. What part should we take off to make a word? Le. If we take all of the le, put it aside, what remains? B, E, that makes B. Flynn wanted to say B-E. Congratulations, Berenice. Sometimes he says extra sounds in words. For example, instead of sofa, he'll say soful. That doesn't mean anything. We need to take off a sound to make sofa.
It's of paramount importance to teach the child to analyze the words into sounds and to play with these sounds.
Thanks a lot, children. Thanks to you, I feel that Flynn is a little bit less scared. So, we say A, B, C. Everybody takes the C and puts it aside.
If you don't have an alphabet, you can ask the children to construct it with any materials like Play-Doh, cardboard, stones, and so on.
Now we take away the O and put it in our bag.
Even without letters to handle, you can ask the children to make the shape of the letters with their bodies or to trace the letters on the back of their classmates and recite them. Teaching the alphabet in a multisensory way is always possible.
I'll give you a letter and you'll have to guess which one it is. You don't say anything. Excellent. You found the right letter.
French is really a difficult subject for the pupils because its spelling is very complicated. The children need a lot of support to memorize the correct spelling of the words. So we can use the multisensory methods with blocks. It doesn't matter what we use. We can use cards instead of blocks.
Open your box and take out your reading and spelling cards.
A growing pack of reading cards can be used as the child learns to read. It's a very effective tool because the pupils can revise these cards frequently and therefore consolidate the memorization of the correspondence between sounds and letters. Moreover, it belongs to them and can be taken home to be revised regularly. It allows self-correction. It can be personalized depending on their difficulties. Some children with dyslexia literally freeze in front of long words. For them, segmenting words into syllables and reading syllable by syllable helps them enormously.
Then we're going to move our thumbs, ga, and then we're going to move roo, and if we put it all together, it makes kangaroo.
You need to use teaching methods which are adapted to their needs. That is structured, multisensory, and phonic for the teaching of reading and spelling.
Alligator.
There are several tricks to cut up long words into syllables. One of them is to put your hand under your chin and to say a word like rhinoceros. And slowly we count how many times our jaw dropped and touched our hand. Rhinoceros. How many times did your chin touch your hand?
4.
Yes, 4 times. Now we say rhinoceros slowly and we clap our hands. Rhinoceros. How many times have you clapped?
4.
When we write, we always trace the letters between 4 lines. You can see that there are 2 green lines. We go up to the top, then we go down to the bottom, and we come back from where we started.
When the children spell a word, they write it all together. We can say to one child, look back at the first letter. To another child, don't forget this is a verb. Did you make the agreement with the number of people? To another child, you forgot a letter. Can you correct yourself? So we have a lot of quick and effective improvements. First, we can respond individually to each child to help him correct his mistake. We have a global view of the classroom, and we can see what all the children think and answer. And the children are much more active and engaged in the learning process. What the child doesn't like is to have a mistake noticed and think, I am hopeless. But we can correct the mistake. We don't stay with the error, and we're in the business of making progress. Matteo, you're Seb's coach. You show him where we are in the text.
Coaching consists in making the children work 2 by 2. One is the coach and the other is the coachee.
We gaan met de fiets naar school. Ik woon Buitenhoofddorp en moet iedere dag op de fiets naar school.
The advantage of coaching is that the whole classroom doesn't hear the errors, so the pressure on the child with difficulties is reduced. Moreover, the corrections are not made by the teacher, but by a classmate. In all cases, a golden rule to follow at any rate is never to ask a child with dyslexia to read out loud or to write in front of the classroom. It will only increase the pressure and may make him feel ridiculous. The principle of self-correction is very powerful and very important for children with dyslexia as well as for other children.
You're going to put the sheets on top of each other and you're going to put them up to the light so that you can see if you've surrounded the same letters.
Visualization entails inducing the students to transfer words and sentences into pictures and helps understanding and memory.
We are in Dumb City. Bob and Bobette help Mrs. Miss. Mrs. Miss is very gentle. The G of gentle.
We are in Dumb City. Bob and Bobette help Mrs. Miss. Mrs. Miss is the teacher of the school. She is young and pretty. She is wearing a black skirt. Bob and Bobette come back from school with Mrs. Miss.
Mind maps can greatly enhance understanding and memorization.
So we're going to take the main ideas from the text, and for this you're going to draw branches, because we're drawing a tree. So, for example, we can have here his childhood, which is one of the main ideas from the biography of Guy de Maupassant. And we can make sub-branches here, like the members of his family and so on. The father, the mother and the father. So we're going to construct a map, which will help those of you who find mind maps easier to retain all the main ideas from the biography without using a written text.
Guy de Maupassant was born in 1850 and died in 1893. His childhood, his father was named Gustave, and his mother, Laure.
Mind maps can be used at any age and can have any number of shapes. For example, each of the subtopics may have a different color.
This is about salaries. What is it? It is a professional income, so the salary is payment for work. Then I draw a line for the formal document, which is called a pay slip, and it is given at least once a month to the person.
A person with dyslexia needs to face this condition all his or her life. She needs to put in place tools and strategies to face her difficulties with concentration, short-term memory and organization. Scarlett tells us about her own tips.
Being dyslexic has made some things more difficult. I can't be very spontaneous. I need to think about what I need to do, about how I'm going to get to a place, and so this requires a lot more time. I need to plan. I need to look in my diary to see what I must do, when, how long it's going to take me, and how long it will take me to get there. I believe that dyslexia has made some things easier. For example, if I need to organize an event, it is very easy for me, perhaps because of all of my systems, to make it more creative. Dyslexia has made me more creative and also more autonomous. I really had to learn to cope, so I thank dyslexia for that.
You need to use adapted materials which are suited to their age and interests, and which give them, or give them back, the taste for reading and learning. Here are the 4 elements to put in place to provide dyslexic pupils with a strong and efficient support structure which holds them firmly.
There is nothing a dyslexic can't do, and you are missing out if you don't take the opportunity to identify dyslexics and put support in place to get that benefit.
Yeah,